Hi everyone. Guess who? One thing about you can be sure of, when you see the green room, you know what's coming. There's nothing complicated here. You'll notice there's no bells, no whistles, no editing, no titling, no fancy little promos in the front. Just me and you. How much more simple can it get? Whatever happened to simplicity? Who knows? The shadow knows. All right. Here we go. Are you self-aware, realized, or enlightened? Which are you? Think about it. Are you self-aware as a person? Are you realized as a person? Or are you enlightened? Pick one. Which one did you pick? Okay, I got you. Let's start off with self-aware. What is a self-aware person? Well, let's take a look. If at one point, pretty much all of us have been what I call asleep. What do asleep people do and look like? And I can assure you, there are lots of them on the planet, and I think you've all seen them. Asleep people live in a 50-foot universe or circle. And asleep people have no interest other than what's going on in their little mediocre world. They couldn't care less with anything that's going on the planet. They are all about themselves. They're self-indulgent, and all they care about is their own personal pleasure, comfort, and having their needs met. How many millions and millions and millions of people do we know like that? Aren't they wonderful creatures? There they are. You can see them in shopping malls. You can see them downtown. You can see them walking on the street. They don't even know who you are, where you are, or that you even exist. And in most cases, they have this thing in their hand. And it's a, I don't know what the hell you call it. It's a device of some kind. I think they're getting ready to say, Scotty, beam me up! There's no intelligent life down here. It's a 50-foot circle. But they have this device, and you can see them in the shopping malls. You know, they're walking around, you know, their elbows stuck up in their head like this, and they're yapping away. I have no idea who they're talking to. They probably don't either. They just want to look good for other people. They're yapping away and they're talking. And then suddenly they'll do a strange thing, and their thumb starts going, or a couple of fingers, and they're hitting these really weird looking square things on this device. And they're doing this while they're walking. And if you watch them very closely, you can see how stupid they look. As they're walking around, they're hitting buttons on this thing they have in their hand, right? And they mumble. They're mumbling, you see. And, oh my God, not only is one person doing it, but there are hundreds of them doing it. As they're walking around, some are like this, some are like this. And occasionally, it doesn't seem to matter the age bracket, okay? They could be young ones, middle age, or even older ones. Somebody walking around and they trip over a bench, or they bang into a door, and you have to wonder whether, they can actually see, or whether they're kind of addicted, or the question I ask myself is this thing permanently attached in their hand, or does it actually come out sometime? Does it have any function? And if you listen to them, and here's the beautiful part. I've done this in the past. I've listened to all of these beautiful people in a 50-foot circle where they exist in their universe. And sometimes you can listen to them talking, and I have relatively never heard any of them saying anything worth listening to. And yet they all want to talk loud enough so at least 15 or 20 people around them can hear what they're saying on this yappy device that they use on the side of their head. I don't wondered sometimes why they don't go to a doctor and get them to put that thing on the side of their head and screw it right into their skull so that they can actually go to bed with it. I mean, it would be great too. They could go to the bathroom, have a poop, and they could still yap on the phone while they're wiping their bum. It's an interesting society that we live in, don't you think? And this is the ones that I call the 50-foot circle, their 50-foot universe. And supposedly, if you're looking down from above and you see millions of these people doing this, and you say, gee whiz, is there any hope for this species? Don't know. And the best part that I can say is I don't even own one of those things. As a matter of fact, I will use it in an emergency if I'm going on a long trip. Otherwise, Ned, I can't be bothered with walking around and doing that. But I got to tell you a funny story. It was really, really neat. We have a high school just down the street, and I'll just show you what's happening to the younger generation because they're now being programmed for their 50-foot circle. These are the sleepers. We call these sheeple or sleepers, if you want to call them. I'm watching this one day, and I could see this girl coming down from high school, probably about 15 or 16 years of age. And she's walking down. She got one of those things in her hand. And I said, I just had a feeling like you get an intuitive flash. This is going to be a moment to remember. And she's walking down. Of course, they all do this. They got their head down. And just, and you just know what they're saying. It's going to be tense. And right up on the side of the sidewalk, we have one telephone pole that's a little bit closer to the sidewalk than the others for some oddball reason. And I'm saying, oh God, shit, it's going to happen. Sure enough, she's walking down, and all of a sudden she's smacked right into the telephone pole. And I'm saying to myself, God help us. Is this what our society is coming to? Where our younger generation cannot function without one of these things either on their head or in their hand. And I wonder what this person is going to be like by the time she is 25 or 30. Is technology going to become so important to us that we cannot function without it? Whatever happened to talking to people? Whatever happened to communication with others? Whatever happened to walking down the street with your head held up like you were proud and feel good about who you are and not be hooked into one of these devices that has become your magnificent obsession? I relate the devices that we see in the hands or you place on the side of your head, and you do all of the recordings and pictures of yourself, selfies, I believe they call them, selfies. And you put them up on social medias, these selfies kind of thing. That I think what's going to happen is we're going to go into a stage and a phase here that if this ever shuts down, there's going to be even, not only in the community, a lot of sad students in high school, there's going to be a lot of very helpless adults, even in the spiritual community, because I know a lot of you have that device. And how dependent upon it are you at this point? Do you actually get a chance to listen anymore of what is actually going on inside of you? Or are you actually more interested in what is more going on inside of that? There's a question here that's important. And at some point, you're going to realize that if you're part of that group who's totally addicted and you cannot function without that device in your hand, or hopefully strapped or screwed onto your head at some point as part of your brainwave function, which is coming, by the way. Someday they're going to have technology will come up with a device that you can cut a hole in your head and implant this thing, and a wire will go into your ear, and you will be able to be hooked in to technology all the time. Never a moment where you won't have it. Won't it be wonderful? But then along the way, what happens is some people get to the point where one day they're walking down and they're participating in the human process of going around in circles. That's what we do. We go around in circles. And the circle is 50 feet in circumference. And that's our universe. And that's where we live. But somewhere along the line, you wake up one morning and you say to yourself, is this it? Is this all I've got to look forward to for the rest of my life? Plugged in to this thumb device, plugged in to this thing I got on my head. Is there anything out there besides this? Is there anything in me besides what's out there? And I think once you do that, as I did, I woke up one morning. I had a nice big house that I lived in, a marriage that was, well, a marriage. 2 cars in the driveway, not brand new. A nice big tent trailer to go camping with. A nice big boat and motor. All of the trappings of suburbia, or burbia, the 50-foot circle. I woke up one morning and I said, is this it? Is this all I got to look forward to for the rest of my life? The same old, same old, same old, same old? Jeez. At that moment, I became self-aware. I realized that I had become part of this 50-foot circle that everybody wanders in. And I decided no more. I wanted to find out who I was, what potential lied within me. And at the same time, I also realized that I needed to accept responsibility for who and what I was and what I was doing, and where I was going with what I was doing. And when I became aware that I no longer wanted to be part of that, and when I became aware that I took responsibility at that moment for having created that 50-foot circle for myself, and also allowed others to help me create that 50-foot circle, I decided no more. And if you've come across that particular point and you realized that you wanted to change things, you have become a self-aware person. A self-aware person is one who realizes that the universe doesn't function around them. The universe functions from within them. And if you want to know anything beyond yourself, you have to start spending time with yourself and start accessing some basic principles and law to be able to become even more self-aware. So I did. What I did was I wanted to experience more of the world than what it was at that point. So I went on, as many of you probably already have, a program of learning everything I can that was outside of the 50-foot circle. And I spent X amount of money on books, cassette tapes. At that time, there was no internet. Internet was about 4 or 5 years later. And I became aware of what was going on outside. And the more I became aware of what was going on outside, the more I became aware that there were things in my life that I was not happy with, that I did not like, that I didn't want to do. And I found out that there are a whole pile of people besides me that are doing a whole pile of things that they don't like and they don't want to do either. And I became even more self-aware. And when I got to that point, I decided that I really wanted to change. And what I did was, I only did one thing. I learned how to meditate. That meant going inside of myself and experiencing something that I have never explored before. Another universe. Another infinite reality of potential, creativity, excitement, challenge, fun, and I got excited. I got real excited. I wanted to know everything there was to know about this wonderful person called Mel. And I became realized. I realized just how much untapped energy. I realized how many more things that I could do. And I realized that life began at 36 for me. Prior to that, I lived in a 50-foot circle. And this is what I see going on in the world today. So many of us have become attached to the thing in our hand or the thing on our head that we don't spend any time spending time realizing who we are and what we are. And I think when a person actually goes through a few years of spiritual growth, you begin to realize just how many people are experiencing difficulty at this point. You realize the challenges that you see on the planet, and you see the difficulty that people are going through. You realize that unless you change and grow and evolve, and then you can turn around and start assisting other people to change and help them to realize and to become self-aware, that it's a very fulfilling aspect of yourself. And that's inevitably when you become self-aware and you realize, a realized person, that you can do so much for the personal satisfaction of joy of being of assistance to other people. And then when you realize that you've actually made a commitment to yourself to be self-aware, and then when you become self-aware enough to become realized, you realize that you want to be of assistance to others and to help them to become self-aware. And then ultimately, down the road, you will experience enlightenment. Can you smell it? Enlightenment. Isn't it a wonderful thing? Enlightenment. How many stories have you heard about enlightenment? How many books have you read about others who have acquired enlightenment? How many different expressions have you heard about enlightenment? Have you thought about what it would be like if you were enlightened? What would it feel like? What would you think like? What would you see? What would you hear? What would you say if you were enlightened? It's a very big word, very complicated state of mind, very complicated state of being. And probably, like many other people, when you've become self-aware and realized, you probably sat down and meditated and thought about what would it be like if I was enlightened, if I was an enlightened being. I did. I read all of the books and read all about all of the sages and teachers and New Age people who perceive themselves to be enlightened. And I came up with my own definition. And this is what I came up with and share it with you for the moment, if I may. I always believed that an enlightened person would be of impeccable character and nature. Then an enlightened person would have all of the wonderful attributes and character of principles such as integrity, honesty, sincerity, compassion, all of those wonderful aspects of themselves, and it would naturally flow from them, be it a male or a female. I believe that their inner life would be a very rich one, that perhaps once they close their eyes, that they were illuminated with a beautiful, luminous light within themselves, that it possibly could feel an emanation coming from them, which could radiate energy in all directions and at great distance, and actually have an effect upon other people. I also envisioned that an enlightened person would be bestowed with some unusual attributes, composition, writing in many forms, different languages perhaps, probably have the ability to be able to travel to different dimensions and realities, and all of those wonderful skills that we all imagine and feel that might belong to an enlightened person. Are you with me? And then one day, higher self stepped in. It was really quite an experience. And I have this conversation with higher self. I can actually hear the voice. And this wasn't too long ago, about 2 weeks ago, and I was contemplating enlightenment. Higher self said to me, "Mel, why is it you and so many others come up with all of these extravagant expressions, definitions, and picturesque explanations of what is enlightenment is? Don't you realize how simple enlightenment is?" And I said, "Then explain it to me." And higher self said, "All it means, Mel, is you're just not as stupid as you used to be." Gotcha. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.